Hello, Abigail here with the Tarotscopes for Aries season, Gemini sun, moon, and rising. My Geminis, this Aries season is an exceptional one. I know it sounds like I say that every other season, but this is truly something else. So we enter Aries season and experience the spring equinox in the center of eclipse season. So we are in the eclipse portal as we enter what might be considered the spring portal, and there's chaos and energy just swirling and building on itself, also in the middle of the Venus retrograde and in the middle of the Mercury retrograde. So it's a lot. Also, Mars is still in its post shadow period for the retrograde, and not that far from where it's stationed a few weeks ago. So yeah, it's a lot. And when I say a few weeks ago, it's actually been closer to a month. But it's still a really intense time. And I think it's important to take note of this as we go into it. I also don't think that that infusion of spring energy that usually gives us a boost and activates us to get stuff done is really going to fully kick in until we get on the other side of the retrogrades. So, closer to the end of Aries season, you're going to start to really feel that spring energy. It's going to be there. You're just not going to be able to harness it to use practically. So, allow yourself to wallow in whatever you need to wallow in a bit more. Allow yourself to relax. If you do something, do it for enjoyment. Do it to release tension rather than to make yourself be productive. There's not a whole lot that's going to get done that the universe hasn't already put on the books up until we get on the other side of the Venus retrograde and the Mercury retrograde. And both of those station within a week of each other. I think the Mercury one, we get the Mercury station on the 7th of April, and the Venus one is either the 14th or the 12th. Don't fact check me on that, but it's right in that area. So we're really not going to feel that kind of uptick of fresh energy until then. I do think we'll start to feel the build towards it at the very end of March once we finish off that um, solar eclipse in Aries. It is the Mercury retrograde already, folks. Solar eclipse in Aries, and also Neptune on the 30th moving into Aries for the first time. So, yeah, a lot's going on. I just wanted to put it in context. I have a longer, not really a longer video, but a video specifically on kind of the shifts in Aries season that you can check out if you want to get kind of a wider scope. But I kind of wanted to put this in perspective for you. We also get a beautiful air full moon when the Venus. Oh, I have my notes here. Why am I guessing? LOL. It is the 12th. It's the same day as the Venus stationing direct is the same day as the Libra full moon. And that's why that's important because that's a Venus full moon. So there is a beautiful air moon, one of your besties, that I think is going to feel really good for a lot of us. It still has its own unique complications. Let's just say that. But it is going to be a really beautiful, lovely moment after all of the things we have been through, especially with in the next few days, Mars entering into Leo. And so we're finally out of that detriment post shadow period, and we'll only have a few more weeks where we're in the early degrees of Leo with that post shadow, but it will feel fresher and more alive. And also, Mars will be going into that trine with Neptune. It'll be going into that trine with the planets as they re enter Aries. So, a lot of really fresh fire energy coming in. You do have an interesting spread of cards. Some might say a little at odds, but I think we can weave the story that the guides are asking for. Let's get into it. So, your archetype card is the Siren. I really think this is interesting because your cards aren't exactly siren-esque, but what is calling to you at this moment? Sometimes we can become the siren. Sometimes there is a siren call. If you know about sirens in mythology, they are creatures who you think they might be part human looking, but their basic function is to sing beautiful, alluring songs to sailors, and then they get crashed on the rocks, and the sirens get to munch on them, or at least see their demise, which they enjoy. If I remember, sirens aren't very beautiful to look at, but they are beautiful to listen to. I think in this context, I think maybe we need a siren moment. Maybe we need something to distract and allure us, something to pull us, maybe not on the rocks, but maybe away from the perils that we are looking at. I don't think the siren is always vicious and cruel. I think it's well known that sailors weren't exactly the most humane people. So take that as you will. I do think maybe you can listen a little to the siren's call this season. It also reminds me that we are in the Venus retrograde. Where is the retrograde pulling you? Where are you being called? Maybe you don't need to go all the way there, but maybe there's something that can distract you for the better, can keep you energized. Maybe there's a fantasy you can find because Venus is going to be entering into Pisces where it's exalted, retrograded, and fantasy can be a very helpful escape. Um, the double's been coming up a lot, and when I see that at a time like this, maybe it is about obsessions and ways in which we get pulled into stuff that might be not the best for us, but also maybe we need a little bit of the devil. Maybe we need to be pulled into something to distract and to use as a coping mechanism. Now, obviously, we don't want to go so far that we lose ourselves, but what are some siren songs that have helped you in the past? Not all sirens are bad. What is a siren song that has called you in the past? What is something that has helped you through a difficult time? Now, obviously, we want it to be safe and not harm ourselves or others, but maybe there's a hobby or a little obsession that you can pick up this season to really help you cope with what's going on. We have coping mechanisms for a reason. Yes, a lot of times coping mechanisms outwear their welcome, and we need to find other ones. But there's some that can be really useful. A coping mechanism that I fell into naturally, and then I started tracking it, and I was like, oh, it's every time that Venus is retrograde, is erotic material, novels, books. This time around, it's graphic mangas with spicy content. Last time around, it was Regency novels with spicy content. You don't have to have these escape mechanisms or fantasies, but what is your siren call? What can distract you a little from the rocks that you really can't do anything about right now? Um, do I think you're going to crash on them if you listen to the siren? No. Um, make it a little close. But what can distract you? What beautiful melody can you listen to and be drawn into just to escape the present for a moment? And I'm not saying this to be like we should detach from reality or constantly be disassociated, but we have those mechanisms for a reason. And sometimes they can be used productively to help us in a time that might be difficult, to help us in a season that is going to be a little hard to get our hands on, and also so much energy that we're going to need a lot of rest and downtime. So maybe you do need to scroll on your phone more than often. Maybe it's not time to to block yourself from watching a TV show back to back in a couple of days. This isn't normal advice that I'd give for the 24/7, but there's not a whole lot you can do practically. It's very much putting one foot in front of the other this season. And in that moment of feeling a bit helpless, having something to distract, allure, to sing to us might be useful. So pick up a hobby, read something fun, do something interesting, go down like a rabbit hole on some topic and educate yourself on it. It doesn't have to be practical. It could be like perler bead designs. I don't know what it is. Um, well, let's get into the cards. I know my interpretation might seem a little silly, goofy, and maybe I'm ignoring the rocks too much, but I really do think a lot of us just need to find ways to healthily cope in this time and in the season because I'm not going to lie, I don't want to fearmonger, but it is going to be a little rough. And there are lovely gems and beautiful moments in it, but I don't think it's fair to also pretend like the landscape of the worlds, of the places we live in, of the politics, is simple or easy to digest, is not frightening and terrifying. Um, and in order to survive, we are going to need multiple kinds of tools. And some of those tools are the ability to cope and to find mechanisms to distract us, not for long term. You can be engaged, and I have read spicy mangas and also stayed on top of what's going on, and also signed petitions and called and done things like that at the same time. Anyways, moving on. So we start off with the Six of Cups. It does feel that, especially for you guys, my Gemini heavy people, it does feel as though a lot of the past is kind of coming to the surface this Aries season, which makes sense considering Pisces season is the end of the zodiacal year and we're kind of carrying a lot of astrology into this. We're carrying this eclipse cycle over, we're carrying over those retrogrades, especially in the early part of Aries season. I think you're gonna have to face the past. You're gonna have to re-examine relationships and dynamics that you maybe hadn't considered before or hadn't seen in a certain light. It does feel as though you're gonna have to maybe do the typical fielding, what I call the corpses coming to the surface in Mercury retrograde, when things that have been long gone seem to resurface. And on top of the Venus retrograde, this energy of like people resurfacing and relationships resurfacing that we thought were no longer in being. It's going to be pretty heavy, especially, like I said, in the first part of Aries season. So keep an eye on that. Allow yourself to process. I think this is more about observation than you needing to come to any kind of conclusion about the past. You know, we are all different people at different times. You don't need to shame or guilt yourself or be like, why was I with that person? That was insane. We all have those moments of being with people who are not the best for us or who are just karmic connections that we needed to meet in order to finish something, but it wasn't for the long haul and it wasn't for a good time. Um, and then we have the Ten of Wands, which makes sense. There's a lot of overwhelm in this season for you, especially because the cards do get a little lighter and more hopeful after this card, but especially the first half of Aries season, I think it's going to feel a little crunchy for my Geminis, which is funny because a lot of times when we get chaos energy, I find that Geminis tend to fare the best, or at least to be able to shake things off. I don't think that's quite the case in this Aries season. There's a lot of heavy stuff happening. Um, but as we move into the later parts, it gets better. But with this one, I think it's good to remind you that not all of the overwhelm and the things that are overwhelming you are bad. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing as well. So put down any extra wands you can. Try to cull it down to one or two or three versus you needing to carry 10 wands around everywhere you go and they've become a cage for you. Release what you can release. Don't feel the need to have to do everything all at once all the time. You don't need to do that. You can do that later. There is plenty of time to do things later, especially this year. The summer is going to be more productive for that. The spring is about kind of digesting everything we've experienced in this part of the year. Okay, and then we do have a Three of Wands. There is a ton of potential in Aries season, but you are going to have to kind of slog through the first part, digest those eclipses, deal with those things. I think it's important to note that Aries is in a sextile to um, Gemini. Gosh, words. So there is that kind of activating energy, which while might feel a little tough and heavy in the earlier parts, I think once Neptune moves into Aries, you get that little zhuzh in the early degrees of Gemini, that little ease that Neptune can sometimes bring to a situation because it's blurring the lines. So there is a huge amount of potential in all this. I don't want to sound doom and gloom, especially with my kind of coping mechanism heavy entrance into this video. Um, but yeah, you're going to have opportunities. You're going to see kind of the fruits of your labor, or at least the fruits of your planning kind of come to play, but it's going to be more of like an opportunity being open for you rather than a gift being handed to you. So make sure you step through those doors, but make sure it's a door that doesn't add too much to your plate. And if you're going to step through that door, then maybe let go of some stuff that you're currently holding on to. And then we have another lovely, lovely moment. This is beautiful. The Taurus has had this card as well. I said they had it at the beginning. So you have a moment of newness. This is the moment of being on a threshold of stepping through into something new and alive and beautiful. And I like in this deck, it's called the Trickster, which I think is this deck is very Gemini to me. I think the Trickster very well fits Gemini, not in a negative way. I think there's a lot of cleverness and kind of the more playful side of Mercury really shines in Gemini energy. So it's time to have fun. It's also time to continue to be a little subversive, to do things your way. The things that you're going to get in this season aren't going to be the things that everyone's like, ah, yes, a wise choice. It's going to be something that is good for you and functional for you and invigorating for you. It's not really going to toe the line with society, which I'm sure you're relieved to hear. So yeah, enjoy this moment. Be the trickster, be playful. It does feel really big. It feels like a lot, especially with you having to process, but all of that processing and that kind of releasing of stuff that you're going to do in the early part of Aries season is setting you up for more freedom as you head towards Taurus season. So enjoy that. When you finally feel those wands drop away, be the fool, play, enjoy, have fun, um, leap into new opportunities, but make sure they are new. If opportunities show up that have a lot of old energy, I mean, don't not take them if you feel like that is what you should do, if that's what intuition is telling you. But I feel very much that the stuff that you should be doing now is like fresh slate. Obviously, everything has energy carried over, whatever. But this is very much like a fresh slate, something you've never done before, something that's a new frontier for you that you can really sink your teeth into as we move through 2025. So, you know, if an old opportunity kind of revisits you, maybe be a little wary of it. Just say that. Because we do have the Venus retrograde and we do have words. Venus retrograde and we do have the Mercury retrograde. It's working. The Mercury retrograde is working. Um, so just be aware that we're going to be offered opportunities that are not quite what we want towards the beginning of Aries season, that look really good or will fill a need in the moment, but long term are just not going to work out. So, just be aware. I tell this to everyone. This is true for love, career. When you're about to get the thing you've been wanting for a really long time from the universe is going to hand you some maybes, some almosts, some okay opportunities where you're going to be like, wow, this would be really great if I just had this. This person would be really great if they were just a little more like this, or if they were a little kinder. That is the universe being like, what do you really want? And are you really serious about what you want? And you pass those up so that the universe can send you something that is exactly what you want and need. And yeah, when you get it, it may not be one for one, but it is something that will fit that hole that you were trying to fill, that need that you were trying to meet. Um, I had someone, it was during the Venus retrograde, ask me, they were really upset. They had gotten a job and then were immediately let go and they didn't know why and they were super confused. And I was like, don't worry, that job would have failed anyways. You're going to be okay and just sit on it. An opportunity is coming because that's what my guides told me. And yeah, I got a message from this person 2 months after the Venus retrograde telling me that they had gotten a different job. And looking back, that other job would have not worked out for them. And they got something so much better and so much more tuned to what they needed in the long term. So that's my kind of little story of hope. When you get offered these relationships, maybe an old relationship comes back in and says, hey, do you want to try this again? It doesn't have to be romance. It can be a friendship, whatever. Doesn't mean you don't accept it, but it means you need to be cautious that it is what you want, that it is what you need. Because right around the corner, there's very likely probably something that is more suited to you, better for you, better for how you function. Just a heads up. And then last but not least, we do have the Nine of Swords. There's so much push and pull in this season for you, especially with the cards you got. There's so much like new opportunity combined with old things that are wearing you down, combined with the past and the future and portals that you can step through, that it is probably going to cause some distress. In those moments of fear and anxiety, remember that you just need to put one foot in front of the other. You don't need to know what the future brings or holds. You don't need to sacrifice parts of yourself to get what you want. You can be all of you and have everything that you need. Okay? And when you are worried that that is not true, that is a sign that whatever that situation is, opportunity is, whatever, not for you. Yeah. Anyways, my dears, this is my reading for you. It does feel a little sticky, but like I said, find your coping mechanisms. Hang on. Like I said, ones that do not harm you or other people. But, indulging is not a bad thing, especially in this season. And y'all are in for a big year. We've got Uranus moving into Gemini later this year. Saturn's going to be moving into that little sextile with you guys. Also, You've got that trine with Pluto. It's a lot. So give yourself the credit for what you've been doing and all that you've done before, and trust. Trust in the path, and also trust in your knowing if something is meant for you or not. Whether it's old, whether it's new, whatever it is. Anyways, my loves, blessed spring equinox, blessed Aries season, and I will see you in a different space.